What happens when a beloved daytime television host comes face to face with a guest who refuses to play by the rules? In just 33 seconds, a single comment would shatter the carefully constructed image of Grace and turn a friendly interview into the most shocking moment in talk show history. Tamron Hall had built her reputation on creating a safe space for honest conversation. Her warmth, her genuine curiosity, and her ability to ask the tough questions while maintaining respect had made her show a destination for celebrities and everyday people alike. She treated every guest with dignity, every story with care, but on this particular afternoon, that respect would be tested in ways she never could have imagined. The studio audience had no idea what they were about to witness. The cameras were rolling, the lights were bright, and anticipation filled the air as Tamron walked onto the stage with her signature smile. She had prepared thoughtfully for this interview, as she always did. Her team had spent weeks coordinating, planning questions that would be interesting but fair, creating an environment where her guests could share their perspective. Meghan Markle entered to applause, waving at the audience with a practiced smile. She settled into the chair across from Tamron, adjusting her outfit, seeming relaxed and ready for what should have been a straightforward conversation. The first few minutes went smoothly enough. Tamron asked about recent projects, about life changes, about the usual topics that fill the opening segment of any talk show interview. But then, something shifted. Tamron, doing what she does best, asked a question that was direct but not disrespectful. You've spoken a lot about your own experiences, but some people feel that your platform could be used to highlight issues beyond your personal story. How do you respond to that? It was a fair question. The kind of question any good journalist would ask. The kind of question that guests on talk shows answer every single day without incident. Meghan's expression changed. The smile faded. Her posture stiffened. And when she spoke, her voice carried an edge that hadn't been there moments before. "I think that's a ridiculous question, Tamron," Meghan said, her tone dripping with condescension. "You clearly don't understand the scope of what I've been through, the things I've had to endure. For you to sit there and suggest that I'm not doing enough is honestly insulting." The audience fell silent. This wasn't playful banter. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was hostility, clear and unmistakable. Tamron, ever the professional, kept her composure. "I don't think that's what I was suggesting at all. I was simply asking how you might respond to that perspective, not saying that I personally hold that view." But Meghan wasn't backing down. If anything, she was leaning in. "You know what your problem is," Meghan continued, pointing a finger across the small table that separated them. "You and everyone else in media want to tear down women who actually speak their truth. You want us to be quiet, to be small, to fit into whatever box makes you comfortable. Well, I'm done with that. I'm done pretending that people like you are actually interested in real conversation. People like you." The words hung in the air like a slap. Tamron's face remained calm, but anyone who knew her could see the flash of hurt in her eyes. She had invited this woman onto her show with nothing but good intentions, had prepared questions with care and respect, and now she was being attacked for simply doing her job. "Meghan, I understand that you're passionate about your experiences," Tamron said, her voice steady despite the tension crackling between them. "But I think you're misinterpreting what I'm asking. This is a conversation, not a confrontation." "Oh, please," Meghan scoffed, rolling her eyes in a gesture so dismissive it made several audience members gasp. "Don't give me that. You invited me here to make yourself look good, to get ratings off my name. Let's be honest about what this really is." The accusation was stunning in its audacity. Tamron Hall didn't need anyone's name to get ratings. She had built her show on the strength of her own talent, her own hard work, her own dedication to meaningful journalism. And now she was being told that she was somehow using her guest, as if the invitation hadn't been a gesture of respect and interest. "That's absolutely not true," Tamron replied, and for the first time, a hint of steel entered her voice. "I invited you here because I thought you had something valuable to share with our audience. I prepared for this interview with the same care I bring to every single conversation on this show. If you feel that asking you a straightforward question is somehow an attack, then perhaps we need to reconsider how we move forward." Meghan laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh or an embarrassed laugh. It was cold, mocking, designed to belittle. "Reconsider how we move forward," she repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Listen to yourself. You sound like every other talk show host who pretends to care but really just wants to put people on display. You're no different from anyone else, Tamron. You're just better at hiding it. The insult was direct now, personal, cutting. Tamron had spent decades in journalism, had interviewed presidents and activists and artists and everyday heroes. She had covered stories that mattered, had asked difficult questions of powerful people, had built a career on integrity and genuine human connection. And now she was being told she was fake, that her care was pretense, that everything she had worked for was a lie. "I'm going to stop you right there," Tamron said, her voice firm but controlled. "I have been nothing but respectful to you from the moment you walked onto this stage. I have asked you questions that are fair and relevant, and I will not sit here and be told that I'm somehow exploiting you or that my intentions are anything other than honest." But Meghan wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her eyes flashing with an anger that seemed wildly disproportionate to anything that had actually happened in the conversation. "You want to talk about respect?" Meghan said, her voice rising. "Where was the respect when you asked me that question? Where was the respect when you implied that I'm not doing enough with my platform? You don't get to decide what's enough, Tamron. You don't get to judge me." "I wasn't judging you," Tamron said, and the patience in her voice was remarkable given the circumstances. "I was asking how you respond to a perspective that exists in the public conversation. That's what journalists do. We ask about different viewpoints. We create space for dialogue." "Dialogue," Meghan repeated, shaking her head with that same mocking smile. "Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, this feels like an ambush. You bring me on your show, you ask me loaded questions, and then you act all innocent when I call you out on it. I've dealt with this kind of manipulation before, and I'm not going to tolerate it here." The word manipulation landed like a bomb. Tamron had done nothing even remotely manipulative. She had asked one straightforward question, had tried to clarify her intentions, had remained professional even as she was being verbally attacked. And still, she was being painted as the villain in a scenario that made no logical sense. The audience was completely silent now. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry on Tamron's behalf. Everyone could see that something had gone terribly wrong, that what should have been a normal interview had turned into something ugly and unfair. "I think we need to take a breath here," Tamron said, trying one more time to bring things back to a place of reason. "Clearly, there's been a misunderstanding. I have no desire to make you uncomfortable or to put you in a position where you feel attacked. If my question came across differently than I intended, I apologize for that. But I also need you to understand that what you're accusing me of simply isn't true." It was a gracious response, a kind response, more grace than most people would have shown in the face of such baseless hostility. But Meghan seemed to interpret even this olive branch as an insult. "Oh, so now you're going to gaslight me?" Meghan said, her voice incredulous. "You're going to make this about my feelings, about me misunderstanding, instead of taking responsibility for your own behavior? That's classic, Tamron. Really classic. Gaslight." The word was thrown around so carelessly, applied to a situation where Tamron had done nothing but try to maintain professional boundaries and honest communication. It was a serious accusation, one that carried real weight, and it was being used to describe a talk show host who had simply tried to do her job with integrity. "I'm not gaslighting you," Tamron said, and now her voice carried a note of real frustration. "I'm trying to have a conversation with you. I'm trying to understand where this hostility is coming from. Because from my perspective, we started with a simple question, and you've responded with personal attacks and accusations that have no basis in reality." "No basis in reality?" Meghan's voice went up another notch. "You're sitting there, on your show, with your platform, telling me that my reality isn't valid? Do you hear yourself? This is exactly the kind of dismissive attitude that I've been fighting against my entire life. And I will not be dismissed by you or anyone else." It was becoming clear that no amount of reason, no amount of explanation, no amount of professional grace was going to change the trajectory of this conversation. Meghan had decided that she was under attack, had cast Tamron as an enemy, and nothing was going to shift that narrative. Tamron sat back in her chair, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a quiet authority that commanded attention. "I want to be very clear about something," she said, looking directly at Meghan. "I respect you as a person. I respect your experiences. I invited you onto this show because I believed you had valuable perspectives to share. But I also respect myself. I respect my team, and I respect this audience. And what's happening right now is not a conversation. It's not a dialogue. It's you attacking me for asking a question that any journalist would ask, and then refusing to accept that your interpretation of my intentions might not be accurate." Meghan's face flushed with anger. "How dare you?" she said, her voice shaking. "How dare you sit there and lecture me about conversation and dialogue when you started this whole thing with your judgmental question? You wanted to make me look bad, and now that I'm calling you out, you're trying to flip it around and make to me the problem." "That's not what's happening," Tamron said, her voice still steady. "And I think deep down, you know that." "Don't tell me what I know," Meghan snapped. "You don't know anything about me. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the pressure I'm under every single day. And for you to sit there in your comfortable little studio with your comfortable little show and judge me for how I respond to that pressure is absolutely unbelievable." Tamron took a slow breath. "I'm not judging you for being under pressure. I'm responding to the fact that you've spent the last several minutes attacking me personally, questioning my integrity, and accusing me of things I haven't done. That's not about pressure. That's about how you're choosing to treat another person." The truth of that statement seemed to hit something in Meghan, but instead of softening her stance, it only made her angrier. "You know what?" Meghan said, standing up abruptly. Her microphone squealed, with feedback as she moved. "I don't have to sit here and take this. I came on this show in good faith, and you've turned it into an attack on my character. I'm done." "Meghan," Tamron said, also standing, trying to salvage something from the wreckage of the interview. "No one is attacking your character. Please, sit down. Let's talk through this." But Meghan was already pulling off her microphone, her movements sharp and angry. "No, I'm not going to let you manipulate this situation anymore. You want to paint me as the difficult one? Fine. Let everyone see what happens when someone finally stands up to you." The irony was staggering. Meghan was standing up and leaving, was refusing to engage in actual conversation, was throwing accusations without foundation, and somehow she had convinced herself that she was the victim, that she was the one taking a brave stand. "This is your show," Meghan continued, addressing the audience now as much as Tamron. "This is her platform, and she used it to try to tear me down. I hope you all see that. I hope you all see what just happened here." But the audience did see what happened. They saw a host who had been nothing but professional. They saw a guest who had turned hostile without cause. They saw someone who seemed to think that any question, any moment of gentle pushback, was a personal assault worthy of a dramatic exit. Tamron stood there, her composure still intact despite everything. "Meghan, you are welcome to leave if that's what you need to do. But I want the record to show that I have treated you with nothing but respect, and I'm sorry that you don't see it that way." "Save it," Meghan said, waving a dismissive hand as she headed toward the stage exit. "I don't need your fake apologies. I don't need anything from you." She was at the edge of the stage now, about to disappear behind the curtain, and she turned back for one final parting shot. "You should be ashamed of yourself, Tamron. You really should." And then she was gone. The studio fell into stunned silence. The audience sat frozen, processing what they had just witnessed. The crew behind the cameras stood motionless, unsure of how to proceed. And Tamron Hall stood center stage, maintaining her dignity even as she had just been subjected to an unprovoked and unwarranted verbal assault on her own show. After a long moment, Tamron turned to face the audience directly. Her expression was composed, but there was a sadness in her eyes. Not sadness for herself, necessarily, but sadness that things had unfolded this way. Sadness that an opportunity for real conversation had been destroyed by unfounded hostility. "Well," she said quietly, and a few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. "That was unexpected." She moved back to her chair, settling into it with the grace of someone who had navigated difficult situations before and would do so again. "I want to say something to all of you," Tamron continued, looking out at the faces watching her. "In this job, I ask questions. That's what I do. I ask questions because I believe in the power of conversation, in the importance of understanding different perspectives, in creating space for people to share their stories. Sometimes those questions are easy. Sometimes they're more challenging. But they always come from a place of genuine curiosity and respect." She paused, collecting her thoughts. What you just witnessed was someone who interpreted a straightforward question as a personal attack. And I can't control how people choose to interpret my intentions. I can only control my own actions, my own words, my own integrity. And I can tell you, with complete honesty, that I did nothing to deserve the hostility that was just directed at me. A few people in the audience began to applaud. It started small, just a handful of people, but it grew quickly until the entire studio was clapping, showing their support for a host who had remained professional and kind even in the face of unreasonable aggression. Tamron smiled, a genuine smile tinged with emotion. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." She straightened in her chair, squaring her shoulders. "We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue with our show. Because that's what we do here. We have conversations, we learn from each other, we treat each other with respect, and we don't let one difficult moment define who we are or what we stand for." The audience applauded again, louder this time, as the show cut to commercial. Behind the scenes, the mood was somber but supportive. Crew members approached Tamron, offering words of encouragement. Her producers assured her that she had handled the situation perfectly, that there was nothing she could have done differently. And Tamron, ever the professional, thanked them all and prepared to continue with her show. Because that's who Tamron Hall is. Someone who shows up, who does the work, who treats people with dignity even when that dignity isn't returned. Someone who asks tough questions because she believes in the importance of honest dialogue, not because she wants to tear anyone down. What had started as a promising interview had ended in disaster, but not because of anything Tamron had done wrong. She had been prepared, professional, respectful, and fair. She had asked the kind of question that creates space for meaningful response. She had tried repeatedly to de-escalate when things turned hostile. She had offered grace even when she was being attacked. And when her guest chose to leave, chose to throw accusations and insults, chose to paint herself as a victim in a scenario where she was actually the aggressor, Tamron had let her go. Because you can't force someone to engage in good faith. You can't make someone see reason when they've decided on their own narrative. All you can do is maintain your own integrity and trust that the truth speaks for itself. The audience had seen the truth. They had watched the entire exchange unfold in real time. They had heard the question that started it all, had witnessed the disproportionate response, had seen one person trying to have a conversation while another person threw a tantrum, and they had chosen to stand with Tamron, to applaud her, to show their support for someone who embodied the values that her show represents: respect, honesty, genuine curiosity, the belief that conversation matters, that different perspectives can coexist, that we can disagree without being disagreeable. These were the principles that Tamron brought to every interview, every show, every interaction. And these were the principles that had been so thoroughly violated by a guest who seemed to believe that any question was an attack, any moment of journalistic inquiry was a personal assault. In the control room, producers were already making decisions about how to handle the situation. The interview would air, of course. The audience deserved to see what had actually happened, to form their own opinions based on the full context, rather than edited clips or secondhand accounts. And Tamron supported that decision completely because she had nothing to hide. She had done her job, she had done it well, and she had maintained her professionalism even in the face of behavior that would have justified a much stronger response. When the show returned from commercial, Tamron welcomed her next guest with the same warmth and enthusiasm she brought to every interview. She asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully to the answers, created space for meaningful dialogue. It was a masterclass in resilience, in not letting one bad experience poison everything that comes after. Because that's the thing about integrity. It's not about how you act when everything is going smoothly. It's about how you act when things fall apart. It's about maintaining your values even when someone else abandons theirs. It's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you did the right thing, even if it wasn't the easy thing. Tamron Hall had faced an impossible situation with grace and strength. She had been blindsided by hostility but hadn't responded in kind. She had been insulted but hadn't insulted back. She had been accused falsely but hadn't become defensive or petty. She had simply stood in her truth, maintained her boundaries, and continued doing the work she loves. And in doing so, she had shown everyone watching exactly what real class looks like, what real professionalism looks like, what it means to rise above pettiness and maintain your dignity no matter what someone else throws at you. The interview that was supposed to be a friendly conversation had become something else entirely, a moment that revealed character, both good and bad, a moment that showed the difference between someone who uses their platform to create genuine connection and someone who sees every interaction as a potential battleground. Tamron had extended an invitation in good faith. She had prepared with care. She had asked a legitimate question, and she had been met with hostility that seemed to come from nowhere, that escalated without reason, that turned a simple interview into a confrontation that ended with her guest storming off the stage. But through it all, Tamron Hall had remained exactly who she has always been, a journalist who cares about the truth, a host who respects her guests and her audience, a professional who knows that doing the right thing matters more than avoiding difficult moments. She had asked one question, just one straightforward, reasonable question, and in 33 seconds of response, everything had changed. The mask had slipped, the true nature of her guest's character had been revealed, and an opportunity for meaningful conversation had been destroyed by someone who seemed more interested in being offended than in actually engaging. It was a moment that would be talked about for a long time, a moment that would be analyzed and debated, a moment that would live on in talk show history as an example of what happens when entitlement meets integrity, when someone who expects deference encounters someone who believes in honest dialogue. And when people looked back at that moment, when they watched the footage and formed their opinions, they would see exactly what happened. They would see Tamron Hall doing her job with skill and respect. And they would see a guest who chose hostility over conversation, accusations over engagement, drama over dignity. The truth was there for anyone to see. And the truth was simple. Tamron Hall had done nothing wrong. She had been a consummate professional facing an impossible situation, and she had handled it with the grace and integrity that her audience had come to expect from her. That's what happens when you build a career on authenticity. When the worst moment comes, when everything falls apart, you don't have to pretend to be someone you're not. You just keep being who you've always been. And that's exactly what Tamron Hall did.